Good afternoon. I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to this meeting. Professor Von Braun, thank you. We've been working on other projects together, and also Greg, thank you. Yeah, the full name of the institute where I work is the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research. It is the main research council we have in Ghana. It has 13 institutes. We have Food Research Institute, Crops Research Institute, Water Research. And then my institute is also one of them. That is the Science and Technology Policy Research Institute. It's a multidisciplinary institute. We have engineers, we have food scientists, we have social scientists, all working in that institute. So I'll be talking about biofortification as an intervention for combating micronutrient deficiency. And micronutrient deficiency is one form of malnutrition that we have, and it is a challenge not only in Africa, but in many parts of the world. Yeah, so this, I should use here, yeah. So this map that we are seeing, the red portion shows areas where we have high prevalence of micronutrient deficiency. So you can see that for the Africa map, greater part of Africa, apart from the Northern Africa and part of Southern Africa, most of the areas have very high prevalence of micronutrient deficiency. And globally, over 2 billion people suffer from micronutrient deficiency. And the main deficiencies exist for vitamin A, iron, iodine, and zinc. And this is just to show you some statistics where about 48% of children under 5 in Africa suffer from vitamin A deficiency. And in Ghana, it is said that about a third of deaths that occur in children under 5 years are due to vitamin A deficiency. And the statistics are there. 38% of women in Africa are anemic due to iron deficiency. And also 20% of maternal deaths are caused by iron. And 63% of children in 2011, a research that was conducted showed that over 63% of children under 5 years are anemic. And over 50% of that are due to iron deficiency. And we've heard about some of the major causes, but I'll also highlight some of the major causes. Poor quality diet is the #1 cause. And it's mainly because of low intake of foods that are rich in micronutrients, such as fruits, vegetables, legumes, and animal source foods, because they are expensive, and we also have limited production of these foods. We have a lot of post-harvest losses. We are not producing enough, yet we are also losing so much because we cannot handle them. And then we have a number of food safety concerns. I know people who have stopped eating vegetables because they cannot trust the safety of those vegetables. We are using pesticides just anyhow, but there are a number of challenges. And then we have abundance of cheaper, high-calorie products all over the place. In fact, some are being produced locally, some are being imported. They are all over the place. They are so cheap. So you can go in for maybe a flavored orange drink rather than going for a fresh orange, for example, because that one is cheaper and it's everywhere, easy to reach. And then we have a limited nutrition knowledge. People are not well, they don't have much information on nutrition, so they don't know what they are eating, they don't know the effect of some of these poor diets. And generally, we have poor dietary diversity. We tend to eat one food. Somebody can eat maybe cereal or maize diet in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening. We are not diversifying our diets enough. And also, generally, most of the staple crops we have are very low in micronutrients. For example, cassava is rich in carbohydrates, but in terms of micronutrients, almost zero. But these are the staple foods that we are eating on daily basis. Then the other problem is due to a number of diseases that impair the absorption and utilization of micronutrients. For example, worm infestation. We have a lot of worm infestation affecting our children due to poor hygiene and all that, diarrhea, diseases, malaria, causing anemia, as the gentleman talked about earlier. So all these affect absorption and utilization of micronutrients. And also, naturally, during pregnancy and even child development, there is higher demand for these micronutrients. So, yeah. Now, to address the challenge of low micronutrient in staple crops, we need to come up with some interventions. Interventions that are agricultural, interventions that are nutrition sensitive. And one of them is biofortification, which is a nutrition sensitive agricultural intervention. And biofortification, in fact, Howdy is the father of biofortification, but I will talk about it. And then biofortification is just a process of increasing the micronutrients of crops during production. So by the time the crops grow up, they already have an enhanced level of micronutrient. And this can be done through conventional breeding techniques, or it can be done through agronomic practices like enhancing the soil fertility, practicing good agricultural practices, and also trying to maybe check soil erosion and all those things. You can be able to improve soil fertility, and then these nutrients can also get to the edible parts of the crops. And then we have genetic modification, where you can transfer gene from maybe a crop with a higher level of a particular vitamin or mineral into another crop. But I would just like to emphasize that in Africa currently, all the biofortified crops that we have are produced through conventional breeding techniques, not GM. We are not yet there. There are a number of research ongoing, but they have not yet released any crop biofortified crops produced through genetic modification. Now, this table here is just showing us the difference in nutrient content between biofortified orange fresh sweet potato with high level of vitamin A. For example, you can see that comparing the traditional sweet potato, it will have about 2 parts per million of vitamin A. By biofortified one, we'll have about 32 parts per million, a difference of 30 ppm. And the same thing, if you have high iron beans, you can increase the level up to 82 ppm, as against a traditional beans that will have like 50 ppm. The same with a provitamin A maize. Now, biofortification has been going on for some time now in Africa and other parts of the world. And there have been some impacts. Most of them are project-based. So they carry out a project and then they try to see the impact it will have on the population and are steady. So for example, in Uganda, where they try to implement a project by providing orange fresh sweet potato with high level of vitamin A. And they were able to show that the retinol level in the children increased significantly. The same was also seen in Zambia, where they tried to look at the impact of consuming provitamin A maize. And also the same was also done in India, where they realized that adolescent girls who were given bread made from iron pearl millet also show significant increase in body stores of iron. So biofortification is being implemented worldwide, and a number of countries have these products already available. Over 30 countries already have biofortified crops released, and then there are other 30 countries that are also still testing. They are testing these biofortified crops in those countries. So this table here just shows us, for example, in Bangladesh, we already have zinc, iron. In Ghana, we have orange flesh sweet potato, which is available for people to consume. You can see that Latin America, they have virtually all the biofortified products, iron beans, cassava, PVA maize, and all that. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Now, I have been involved in how I got involved in biofortification. I do a lot of advocacy work. I'm a researcher, but I also do advocacy in the area of food safety. I've done a lot of work. So in fact, I was actually co-opted to join this group. I was actually supposed to be on the food safety panel, but there's a project called the Building Nutritious Food Basket Project, which is trying to scale up biofortified crops in 2 countries in Africa, Nigeria and Tanzania. And Harvest Plus is one of the partners. International Potato Center is leading this project. And then Forum for Agricultural Research in Africa is also leading the advocacy and policy engagement aspect of the project. So that is where I was engaged as a consultant to do the advocacy on behalf of FARA. So I've done a lot of policy engagement. The lady was talking about the need for us to do policy dialogues, advocacy and all that. We have done that. And throughout my interaction with people and all that, I realized there are some challenges. One of them is that people perceive biofortified crops as GM products, and the moment they hear of GM, they don't want to accept the products. That is the perception they have. And also, some of the products are similar to the traditional ones. For example, the provitamin A maize is similar to the yellow corn that we have. How can consumers differentiate between the biofortified one and the non-biofortified one? The same with beans. They all look the same. And then concerns about loss of nutrient during post-harvest handling. And this is real. How do we address that? Low awareness generally. I'm doing advocacy. People tell me, you are talking about biofortified crops, but we have not been seeing, where are the products? So all these things are small projects that need to be scaled up. And then I also realized that we have a lot of policies, good policies, in support of biofortification, but they are not being implemented. A whole lot of them. We have the African Nutrition Strategy, we have Pan-African Nutrition Initiative, Framework for African Nutrition Security, a whole lot of policy documents, so many declarations that are not being implemented. So, out of the advocacy and policy engagements that we have been doing for the past 2.5 years, we have made some achievements at the continental level. For example, biofortification has been integrated or mainstreamed into a number of programs. We have the AU, African Union Business Plan, which is a business plan that will guide the implementation of the Malabo Declaration. They have mainstreamed biofortification into that program. They have even come up with some work plan where I make contribution to. And then the African Development Bank Multi-Sector Nutrition Action Plan has also mainstreamed biofortification into it. And then we have recently, there was a call by AU for research proposals, and one of the themes focused on biofortification. And a whole lot of them. We have a new program in place called the Technology for African Agricultural Transformation, being funded by African Development Bank and other partners, where they are scaling up biofortified crops in a number of countries. So they are scaling up orange flesh sweet potato and then high iron beans. So what is the way forward? I've talked about biofortification, but biofortification alone is not enough for us to achieve our goals of eliminating malnutrition, and especially micronutrient deficiency. We need a holistic approach. So we know of supplementation. It's been going on. They give children, adolescents are giving supplements. And then we also have public health interventions where we give dewormers to deworm children, malaria treatment, and all that. And then we also have the food-based approaches. Food fortification is one of them, and then dietary diversity. Dietary diversity with emphasis on nutrition education so that people know how to even prepare the food in the first place so they can conserve the nutrients. And then with all these interventions, without good policies, without standards, one of the challenges with biofortification is that there are no standards. So countries cannot even monitor or even regulate the biofortified products because there are no standards for that. So we need the standards and also investment plans for the countries. And apart from all this, we need to address post-harvest challenges. It could be a biofortified product, but they can all suffer from post-harvest losses, especially orange fresh sweet potato. That is the main challenge I have heard people talk about. It has a very short shelf life. It's highly perishable. So how can we address all these post-harvest challenges? And for me, I think we need a combination of approaches. We cannot implement any of these things in isolation. So we need to work together so that we'll be able to achieve what we want to achieve. Thank you.